Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by John Fabbricatore, Air Force veteran, retired ICE Field Office Director, and one of the founders of Strong Advocates for Enforcement in Colorado, otherwise known as Safe Colorado, a nonprofit organization that's founded on one principle: let law enforcement do their jobs and enforce immigration laws. Well, John, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
Well, John, the biggest news story this week is the beginning of Operation Aurora. These multi-location raids by ICE and federal partners that took place across Denver and Aurora this week. John, can you fill us in on the details of what happened? Who were they targeting and what the results were?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is targeted enforcement. This is what ICE does on a daily basis, but now it's just broadened a little bit because there's multiple targets. Over the last 4 years, they really weren't able to do their job. There's a lot of casework that has kind of been piling up. And since Donald Trump took office, ICE is going to be out on the street making those arrests of criminal illegal aliens. So, what we saw today was the start of Operation Aurora. They had a bunch of cases that they've been working on. There's probably been surveillance done on those cases. There's been a lot of field work done on those cases. They have individuals by name. They do what's called a field operations worksheet up on every single person that they want to encounter, which will have their criminal history background, how they entered the United States, biographical information, a picture, all that info, and they've compiled that up. They've gotten locations where they believe these people were residing, and they wanted to go out and arrest them. Now, unfortunately, this week, or actually last week, when it was supposed to kick off, there was a big leak. And that leak informed those people and some of those apartment complexes that ICE would be out to arrest them. They pushed that operation back to this week, and the numbers were not there. They hit many of those apartment complexes. The apartments were empty. And they're going to have to start all over looking for some of these individuals. Now, this isn't to say this didn't happen a lot even in my career, back going even 20 years. There were many times that we sat surveillance on homes and we're looking to apprehend people. And then it gets around to the day to go make the apprehension. You get to the apartment and it's empty. For whatever reason, they got a weird feeling. They knew the heat was coming down on them and they took off. But for so many cases for that to have happened over this, it definitely leads to something that, was more than just that. For so many people to have disappeared and to have just left ground as fast as they did, definitely leads me to believe that something was sparked and they were told.
Wow. Any indication or thoughts of who could have leaked the information or how it was leaked to these people?
There's been some rumor and some people have been talking about that it may have been a media organization. I'm not ready to come out and pin that tail on that donkey yet. Let's see where it goes. Tom Homan knows. He knows who leaked and he knows who they leaked to. So that will come out. There will be an investigation if it was a federal employee that leaked that information to the media and gave the media op plans. That person will face justice, especially if you're a federal employee and you did that, you can go to jail. So, they already know who that is. There might not be much that we can do to the media. I'm sure Tom's looking at if there's, something that can be charged if it was the media. But we'll see. Like I said, I'm not ready to say definitively that it was, but here we are today with not as many arrests as we wanted to make. We still made some really good arrests, or ICE made some really good arrests. I don't know if you looked at some of the media that came out. They arrested that one Honduran that had that huge stolen sniper rifle in his house. He had multiple criminal convictions, so they made good arrests. The media is going to try to downplay it because all the arrests weren't made, but they took some violent people off the street regardless.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because there's so much chatter on social media. Of course, we saw the protests at the state
Yeah.
capitol where people are really claiming that, they're taking kids away from their parents and they're going after peaceful people, but that's not really the case, is it?
No, that is not the case. So 99% of what they're going to arrest is going to be people who have either been charged with crimes, have convictions in their criminal history background, or may be involved in something that ICE believes is a danger to the community. So whether that be national security threats, gang members, subversives from other countries that we've identified. Those and some of those will not come out to the media. The media's saying, we want information on this. We want the media's not going to get information on every single arrest because some of those arrests, until they actually are presented to court with those charges, or they're not going to release that information. And also, the media is demanding instant information on many of these cases, but we have to remember that we're dealing with foreign-born nationals, and their own countries have to be notified that they've been arrested. So before ICE can release information on names, they do have to make sure that they're clearing these with those countries as well. So so consulates will get involved, notifications will be made, and then those names will be released. It's a little easier if the person's been in the country and they have a criminal history and a criminal background to release that information because they've already been convicted inside the United States. But for some of these people that may have been encountered for the first time, like some of the gang members, it may be a little bit until ICE releases that information.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's an ongoing criminal investigation. They
Yes.
got to complete the investigation and see what information they can get, who else they can round up. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense if you look at it from that framework for sure. Now, what do you
Yeah,
think?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, what do you think here in Colorado? Because we have our governor, Jared Polis, who set one day we're a sanctuary state, the next day we're not. You have Denver Mayor Michael Johnston, who one day he's going to be leading 50,000 suburban moms in a Tiananmen Square type situation to defend all these criminals. And then the next day says, well, actually, we'll go ahead and cooperate when needed. I mean, what are we to make of the political leadership in Denver and Colorado and how they're reacting to all of this?
Oh, man, it's I've said this before. It's political theater. I mean, that's what's happening with them. They're going to push back on Donald Trump, and I just want people to kind of remember historically what happened under Donald Trump's last administration. We saw abolish ICE out all the time. We had protests all the time. My own house was protested by abolish ICE. I had over 150 people show up in my neighborhood, protest at my home. I had to have FBI surveillance on my house. I had death threats. A man was convicted down in Colorado Springs for threatening to burn me. Those were happening under the first administration of Donald Trump. And we're going to see it come back around again because this is exactly what happens. They will start protesting at the detention center. They will be out in the community protesting about people being arrested. If you're here illegally in this country, you violated law. I don't care that it's civil law. It's still the law of our nation. And you were here illegally. And at some point in time, you're going to have to rectify that situation. So the left wants that to be amnesty. That's what the left wants. They just want an instant amnesty over everybody so everyone can become citizens. That's not the way we do things. We have a legal process in this country to come into this country legally. And you and I have talked before. You know how I feel about legal immigration. I'm for legal immigration. I talk about it in my book, De-Iced. People should be coming here legally into the United States, assimilating into our culture, and becoming productive United States citizens. And that's what America is all about. But that's not what has happened over the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to see the contrast between Donald Trump's first administration, the Biden years, and now Trump's back with a vengeance, it seems. He's not holding back, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this type of action. We see the border being secured. We see a lot of things that maybe we didn't see so much earlier on many years ago. But what do you think we can expect? Can we expect more of this kind of action from ICE and other federal agencies in Colorado?
Definitely, especially because we have a lot of criminal cases right now. So we know that we have about 600,000 criminal cases on the non-detained docket. That's about 400,000 criminal convictions that we're aware of, and about 200,000 charges where people have been charged with crimes and we're waiting for them to have the final conviction on that or sentencing. So there's right there, that's 600,000 cases that we have to take care of. And then we have 1.4 million final order illegal aliens. What they are is they've already gone to see an immigration judge. So they came into the country illegally. They were arrested by ICE previously. ICE gave them what's called a notice to appear. They appeared before an immigration judge. They had the opportunity to argue their case with that judge, whether they should remain in the United States. And that judge said, no, you cannot remain here in the United States. You are ordered deported. Please leave the United States. They didn't. So they have what's called a final order of deportation on them. They are still hanging around the US. And those are cases where people are complaining that we're picking up people that don't have criminal backgrounds. A lot of those do not have criminal backgrounds. So about, 400,000 of them probably have criminal backgrounds, and the rest do not. But here's my issue with that. They came into the country illegally. They had the opportunity to see an immigration judge. They went through the court process. Then the immigration judge found them deportable, asked them to remove themselves, and they violated the law again by saying, no, I'm not leaving. So what do we do with those cases? We've gone through the whole process. We've allowed them in front of the court to argue this case, and they still refuse to follow US law. At some point in time, like I said, it needs to be rectified. There needs to be a reckoning, and they need to be dealt with.
Oh, well, and I think the majority of Americans, with voting for Trump this last election, I think agree with you completely. In Colorado, there's probably more people who agree with you as well than maybe would admit it publicly, because it could be a taboo topic in certain circles. But, I think most people just want to be safe. Most American citizens, most Coloradans, they want to live in a safe community where they're not worried so much about violent criminal gangs potentially invading their home, robbing their business, and of course, these window washers that can
Yeah.
violate your violate your car and be very frightening to some of these, especially like a single woman driving. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think the deportations and this immigration enforcement, what kind of an effect is this going to have on crime and, of course, the drug problem here in Colorado?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon, for bringing that up. So let's actually talk about that because one of the narratives always is, especially from the left or those who support open borders and illegal immigration, is that illegal immigrants commit less crimes than United States citizens. I'm sure you've heard that. Cato Institute has bounced numbers around about that, but even the numbers from the Cato Institute say we agree that the numbers that the Cato Institute put out are correct. So the Cato Institute says that per 100,000 people, United States citizens commit 1,400 crimes per 100,000. Cato then says that illegal immigrants commit 740 crimes per 100,000, if we are to believe that their numbers are 100% true. I don't. I believe that 740 is higher because we don't know what we don't know, right? We have a lot of states that are not reporting illegal immigration. So that number's higher. But just say we'll keep it at 740 just for the sake of argument because that's the number that Cato put out and that's what gets argued all the time. So even if that's true and they commit half the amount of crimes, they're still here illegally committing half those amount of crimes. As taxpayers, we're paying police officers in these communities. If a community has 100,000 people, your police department is probably about 100 officers. Okay, but, with shift work, you got a day shift, a swing shift, midnight shift. You probably got 30 officers per shift. Command staff. You're looking at about 100 officers. You have those 100 officers as taxpayers. You're paying for them to go out and arrest United States citizens committing 1,400 crimes so that we can take care of our crime problem. Now, when you bring in illegal immigration and they're committing 740 crimes on top of the 1,400 crimes that United States citizens are committing, now we got a problem because those 100 officers that we're paying to be specific about crimes that we have committed in our own communities cannot just look at crimes in our own communities. Now they're also dealing with 740 additional crimes being committed by illegal aliens. So that's the way I like to look at it. Cato just likes to throw out this number, and you hear Democrats say it all the time. Illegal aliens commit less crimes. Well, what's the number? What's the number? It should be zero because they shouldn't be here. And if it was zero, our own police department might be able to solve and stop those 1,400 crimes that we have being committed. And maybe we would get to a situation in the United States where we had less crime overall because our police departments could actually do their job.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to see some of these think tanks and other organizations play these mathematical games and these little philosophical quandaries when it comes to people's safety. I mean, these are, those 700 crimes, that's real people in our communities who are suffering, who are struggling. I mean, people getting hurt, assaulted, property crimes. I mean, that number should be zero. Absolutely. We
Zero.
shouldn't be tolerating any level of crime. And if this is an easy way to prevent those additional crimes from occurring in our community, it seems like a no-brainer for people who want to live in a more safe society. That's for sure. What do you think about the drug issue specifically? Of course, we've been hearing so much about fentanyl over the last few years. I mean,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. I mean, and deaths all the time, still reporting, especially in the Denver metro area. I mean, it's a frightening thing. I have coworkers who have people they know who passed away just within the last year from, unknowingly ingesting some of this fentanyl. So, what kind of effect do you think just securing the border in general is going to have on this issue?
Huge. Here's another thing. Let's red pill some more people out of your listeners. So fentanyl's a scourge. Look, it's killing 100,000 people a year, or opioids are, and we've had a heroin problem in this country for many years. Fentanyl is just amplifying that, killing a lot of people. But again, the left loves to say that most of the fentanyl is coming through the ports of entry. It's coming in, where it's lawful to cross. Do you know why we know that most of the fentanyl is coming in through the ports of entry? Because that's where we catch it. Because that's where we have the most officers, the most canine dogs, the most x-ray machines. That's where you're in a line in a vehicle going past an immigration officer who's trained to catch you and stop you. So they say, well, 90% of the fentanyl is coming through the ports. No, that's what we're catching coming through the ports. We have no idea what we're not catching that's going around the border. And the reason we were not catching it going around the ports of entry is because we had Border Patrol agents processing hundreds of thousands, millions of lightly vetted people that were coming across the border, and we're just keeping the Border Patrol in central locations, not going out and arresting those drug teams like they have for many years. And more fentanyl was going around the border. A lot of fentanyl comes through the reservations on the border, too. Down in Arizona, we have Indian reservation, the Tohono Indian reservation. And that reservation, so much comes through there because there's no wall on the reservation. They're a sovereign nation. They're allowed to, they go back and forth across into Mexico. But the problem is, so do the cartels. The cartels cross those reservations, and we have a lot of dope coming through that way. And it's something that we're going to have to work out with those reservations. We're going to have to put checkpoints up outside of the reservation to try to catch some of those drugs coming across. I believe that those Indian reservations should be sovereign nations. I'm not suggesting that we go on to them and we make them do anything, but we're going to have to step out onto those roads away from there to make sure that we're stopping more fentanyl. And President Trump's going to do that. He's going to lock down the border, put more Border Patrol agents out there, put the military out there, because we're losing 100,000 people a year to this drug scourge.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why most Coloradans, whether it's public knowledge or not, I truly believe that most Coloradans support having a secure border, having safer communities, trying to stop this flow of drugs and other criminal activity. But I'm at the supermarket this last week. I see on the light pole outside where the carts go, if you see ICE, call this phone number, report ICE, see it in Spanish, see this. And
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not alone. People are seeing this kind of stuff all across Colorado, in all the metro areas and other places. And what can people do? What can the average Coloradan do to not necessarily, maybe support's too strong of a word, but you know, to do something to try and to protect our communities and keep the lawlessness at bay.
Yeah, I'm pretty active on X. I'm on there quite a bit. And a lot of people actually reach out to me and they ask me that question, Brandon. A lot of people do. And I'm like, just be supportive of ICE. Just let the men and women of ICE know that you support what they're doing, because the messaging that they hear the most comes out of the left-wing media, that they're doing the wrong things, that they're not they're against the Constitution. They're doing all these things that are wrong. Support ICE. Let them know that you care for them. When I was the director of ICE here for Colorado and Wyoming, there was a rally at the detention center by people who supported ICE. See, so ICE all the time sees these rallies where people are cursing them out and saying that they're horrible, they're Nazis, they're all these bad things, and they don't have people supporting them very often. But there was one time that this rally, and Stephen Tubbs and some other conservative radio hosts came out, and they put this rally together, and over 1,000 people showed up, and they had signs supporting ICE, and they had U.S. flags, and they were out there just telling the ICE agents, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for putting your life on the line. Thank you for wanting to keep America safe. And sometimes it's just those little things, the men and women of ICE that they see that and they know, okay, there are people out there that are supporting this mission. President Trump supporting us, that's great. But the men and women of this country are coming out and telling us, hey, we support you. We have your back. That's the best thing that you can do. Don't get involved with these leftists that are out there causing problems. Don't put yourself in harm's way. Don't try to identify who's an illegal alien and who's not, because it takes a lot of training to actually do that. It's not as simple as somebody is speaking a different language, they must be illegal. It's not. Lots of people do come here illegally. They might not speak English great, but they still pass their naturalization. They're still learning. They're trying hard to learn. And they could be a United States citizen, or they could be here lawfully right now on some other type of visa. You don't know. And the last thing we need is we don't need to give the left that kind of ammunition to work against us, saying people are out there just bothering people because of the color of their skin or what their religion is, or something like that. Immigration is not racist because we don't care about the color of your skin. We don't care what religion you are. We don't care. All we care about is, are you lawfully in the United States or not? I've arrested many Canadians, many people from Australia, many people from New Zealand during my time here in ICE. We live in Colorado. I live in Colorado. This is a tourist state. We have people from all over the world come here and decide not to go home. So I love Colorado too. I like being here. But look, you came in, you overstayed your visa. Now you got to go home. And they were from all over the world. So it's not about racism. It's about lawfully being present in the United States.
Yeah, no, that's a great point and really appreciate that. John, you've been doing this a long time. What have you seen in the shift of the attitude of just the general population, or just maybe not the media, because that's a bad example, but
Yeah.
I worked on Tom Tancredo, one of his governor's campaigns many years ago, and of course, immigration enforcement, securing the border, one of his top issues for a long time.
Yep.
And he was talking about this stuff, a long time before Trump came around, and I feel like the issues become more popular, that especially I think when people see, the video footage of these Venezuelan gangs kicking in apartment doors in Aurora, right? Or they hear the stories about people dying from fentanyl, or they see the effects of what's happening in our communities due to these open borders. I think that's kind of shifted a lot of the attitudes. But what have you seen? What have you seen over the years? Do you think that people's attitudes
Yeah.
have changed over border security?
Absolutely. Look, Tom's a friend of mine. Mr. Tancredo. He supported my campaign in the beginning. Him and I have many discussions. I've had lunch with him many times. Discussing immigration. We agree about on 99% of the stuff. We'll always have the one or two things that we don't agree on. But I've known him a long time. And you're right. He was talking about it back then. But you know what the difference is? You're the media now, Brandon. The internet, even since Tom ran for governor, has exploded so much, like leaps and bounds on what's being put out and how citizen journalists are reporting. There's so many people on X right now, that you can go onto their sites and they're at the border showing you what's happening. People in the inner cities filming things all the time, releasing crime data statistics. We have people like Do Better Denver and Denver is Burning, and some of these other people on X that are going in and getting information that the media is refusing to actually report on. And people like you who actually get out there and interview people and let them have a free voice to express the information that they have, and you're sharing that information with the population that wasn't around as much when Tom was running. And that's the difference that you see. And I think that's the turn that we're having with immigration, is people are seeing the numbers. And now with Doge out releasing where all this money is being spent and how it's being spent, American taxpayers are being fleeced, and they're sick and tired of paying for things that they don't want their taxpayer dollars to go to. We want it for our roads. We want it for our schools. We want it for U.S. citizens who've been working their butts off their whole life to have what we want. And we're constantly told, well, no, we can't have this. It's not in the budget. We don't have that money. And then we see hundreds of millions of dollars getting spent overseas on crap that they don't need overseas. We're paying the BBC for 8% of their budget for the BBC it's in England. They got their own money. They got their own taxpayers. BBC, get out of here. We're not paying for you anymore. The money, that 8% needs to go in our own programs.
That's a
Sorry
great
for the
point.
rant, Brandon.
Hey, no, I appreciate it, John. It's great stuff. I really appreciate it because I think you hit the nail on the head so much with this information, right? Information's getting out there. Back when, I mean, imagine if we only had 9 news to watch, right?
Oh my
God,
gosh, right?
God
Yeah.
forbid, but but it's interesting because I talk to people and people who are maybe a little bit more conservative minded, but then they watch 9 News and I hear them say certain things, and it's almost so obvious where they got that information from,
Yeah.
or that certain perspective. So it's interesting to see that power of this legacy media and how it's fading away. And I think now we, because of the internet, we have Donald Trump, because we have new opportunities, and maybe Colorado's just a little bit behind the curve, but I think it's going to change here too, and it is changing. But John, you've been doing this a long time. You've been fighting for border security for over 23 years with ICE, 30 years total in federal law enforcement. So you definitely know what you're talking about when it comes to border security. So, that's why I'm really interested in learning about your newest project, the Strong Advocates for Enforcement in Colorado, otherwise known as Safe Colorado. What are your plans with this organization?
Yeah, I became good friends with Steve Monahan, who ran for CD6 before I did, and that's actually how I got interested in politics. I met Steve right after I retired. He was running in CD6. We became friends. I jumped on the campaign trail with him, helped him out as much as I could. Unfortunately, Steve lost. And then I decided to run for the same seat, and I lost. So, but Steve and I, we have the same ideas. We're both veterans. We're freedom loving people, but we believe that this state, the state of Colorado, has allowed itself to slide because of sanctuary jurisdiction. That they're not really paying attention to the crimes that are going on out there, and that the Colorado taxpayers deserve to be taken better care of, and they deserve to be safe. And the best way that we can do that is to protect them, make Colorado a sanctuary for U.S. citizens, not for illegal immigration. This should be a sanctuary where we feel safe letting our kids ride their bikes after the lights go down, after the sun goes down, where, you can walk in downtown Denver and not feel threatened. I moved here in 1998. I've lived in an Aurora address that whole time. Um, Colfax, I've been up and down Colfax thousands and thousands of times. Imagine what Colfax could be if we really put some money into it, made it an entertainment district, allowed the culture of Colfax to be. I used to love going on to Colfax. I'm a foodie. There is so much good food on Colfax, but people are afraid to go out there and actually walk along Colfax and be down there when the sun goes down. And, I believe that, that the people who are putting their heart and souls into building businesses along that corridor, this the government right now, the politicians in Colorado, the Democrats who have incorporated the sanctuary status in, are not paying attention to them. And that's really what Safe Colorado is about, is about advocating for those lost voices, advocating for people who just want to be safe, who just want to be able to go out, enjoy Colorado, and not have to worry about crime.
Gosh, how nice would that be? To be able to visit the 16th Street Mall, no fear of
Oh,
getting stabbed, walking down
right.
Colfax, not being accosted by some drugged out homeless person, and I would say, and these are real things. This isn't like
Yeah,
hyperbole. I mean,
no,
people know, I know 90% of the people watching this know that, but it really can be that bad, and
yeah,
it's wild down there. I mean, that's the world I want to live in, John, where you leave your car unlocked, or like, oh, I
yeah.
forgot to lock the door to my house. You left the garage door open at night, and you don't have to worry about it. Your kids can walk to the gas station to get ice cream in the summer or something. You don't have to be so worried and concerned. And I think that's the world most people want to live in. So how do we get there? I mean, what's the plan? How do we get to that place?
Well, as United States citizens, constitutionally, that is what the government should be providing to us. Our safety. That's the number one priority of the government, is to keep the citizens safe. Look, we are also responsible for our own safety. I am a 2A advocate, 1000%. Shall not, it's we're responsible for our safety, but the government's first responsibility to us is our safety. So we have to require that our government does its job. And I think what we're seeing with Doge and all this money that's being spent out, the government's not doing that job. They're not putting enough into making sure that we have more money into our own communities. Look at all that money that's gone overseas that we're starting to discover. Imagine if they spent that on Colfax. Imagine if they spent that in Aurora, making better daycare programs for the middle school, middle city kids, inner city kids. Building up programs to make sure that when people get out of prison, that they have something to go to, a job to go to, an industry to go to, where they don't feel like they get out and they don't know what they're going to do and they turn back to a life of crime. We don't have enough of those systems, and we can't pay for them because we're too busy paying for other things in other places and then complaining that we don't have the money. I think if we had those, we would have a safer environment, So yeah, we need to require that our government does it, but it's going to take people voting in the right people to make sure that we get there. And right now, we don't have that in the state of Colorado. We absolutely do not.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, that's it. The people vote that way, and that's the way it goes, unfortunately. So, yeah, I'm an optimist. I think things can change. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Born and raised here in Colorado, I'm not going anywhere, and I
Good.
appreciate that you're here fighting the good fight. And I think there's a lot more of us kind of joining the fight in recent years, and just needs one more person, another person here, another person there to get involved at all levels of government and
Yeah.
do what we can. So John, I really appreciate you taking the time, really interested in your future and what you're going to be working on with this Safe Colorado. So please
Thank you.
keep us updated. Any final thoughts here? Where can people go to find more information about Safe Colorado, and what would you like to share?
Yeah, you can follow Safe Colorado on X. We really like to bump up our X membership over there. So go look for Safe Colorado. Just run a search on Safe Colorado on X, or you can go to my site on X, and I'm sharing stuff from there daily. So yeah, follow that and see what we're doing. But to final off and just to say my last piece, I just want to mention something you said about people standing up and starting to really come back into Colorado. Look, we need leaders. We need people to get involved. So do that. Go down to the state capitol, testify on bills, become part of the solution to making Colorado better again.
Awesome, John. Well, really appreciate it, sir. Please keep us up to date. Anything else going on? And best wishes to you. Good luck.
Thank you, Brandon. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care.